Welcome to Rust Belt Running. I am Andrew Hedinger, and joining me shortly with a coaching tip is going to be Adam Wheeler. This week, I'll be reviewing the Aramco Houston Half Marathon, and a lot of this conversation also works for the Chevron Houston Marathon. They take place on the same day, and this year Neal ran the half. Megan ran the half back in January and was kind enough to come on and give us a review and a few tips for the race. I really enjoyed our conversation together. Houston Marathon took place on January 14th this year, and around 38,000 participants between the two races took to the streets of Houston. The race day temp was a high of 55 with a start of 37 degrees Fahrenheit, humidity at 64. A little breezy wind coming out of the north-northwest at 14 miles per hour, but overall pretty good conditions. And that was a little cooler than the average. The average going to be 64 for the high, with a race day start of 46 typically. Usually very still winds at Houston. So this is a very flat course with very good weather. A little weird in the cycle, it being in January. Megan and I talk about that. But a very good opportunity to run some fast times. This race has held the American Women's Half Marathon record. So it's a record-setting course and a good place to go after a PR or a qualifying standard. Before I throw to Adam for a coaching tip, I do want to ask, is there a race that you've run that you'd like to review? Or is there a race that you're curious about you'd like to see if we can get some more information on it? Drop us a line. Our DMs on Instagram are always open, and you can always email us at rustbeltrunning@gmail.com. Our website is a great place to find us as well. That's rustbeltrunning.com, and there you can find different information about merchandise, our offerings and run coaching, things like that, different ways you can support the show. We strive to keep our podcast content free, without paywalls, without ads. We need your support to do that. Your listens, your shares, your reviews, they're all part of that support, and it doesn't go unnoticed. We're grateful for it, and we appreciate all the support throughout the years. So, all right, enough of the sappiness. I'm going to send this over to Adam for this week's coaching tip.
Here's a training tip from us here at Rust Belt Running. As you keep training through cold weather, one of the things you want to consider is what cold does to actual running performance. We talked last week about how cold will impact hydration and nutrition, and this week we want to talk specifically about what cold does to your muscles and muscular contractions as you try to run, because this is going to have an impact on your performance. First of all, your muscles are going to fire less efficiently and with less strength when you run in cold weather. And what that's going to mean is that if you have specific paces that you're trying to train for, your body's going to have to work harder to hit them as the weather gets colder. A couple other things happen. The amount of oxygen we can use goes down in cold weather, and our resting heart rate actually goes up. And this means harder work when it comes to trying to hit paces that might be easier to hit in warmer weather. And then something else that happens is that our fatigue threshold actually goes down. And so we tend to get tired faster when we run in colder weather. And what all of this means is that if you were training for a race and you're going to be training through that race through a lot of cold weather, it might be hard, if not always possible, to hit some of the paces that you typically try to train at. There's a couple things you can do to combat the effects of cold. One is to do a proper warm-up, raise your body temperature. That might help stave off some of the effects of running in cold weather. Two, layer properly. Make sure that you're wearing warm enough clothing that it might raise your body temperature as well. That can also ward off some of the effects of cold weather running. But there is something you need to keep in mind. If you're training through really severely cold weather, and it's really hard to hit paces that you're used to hitting in training, there might be scenarios where you kind of have to train knowing that you're not going to hit the paces you're used to hitting. And if you're using a training plan that you've used in the past and that you know has corresponded to success, like, hey, I know when I've hit my workouts and I'm hitting race pace for 8 miles consistently, and then I've been able to do that in my races, it might get a little frustrating to go through training where suddenly you can't hit those paces. Monitor to make sure that you're not dealing with overtraining, that your heart rate's not higher than usual, that you're not having trouble sleeping, that you're not achier than normal. But if those signs of overtraining aren't there, you might simply have to make peace with the fact that you're not going to be able to hit some of those training paces in cold weather that you'd be able to hit if the weather was slightly warmer. Simply keep doing the work that you've been doing. Have faith that that work is going to get you to the starting line fit and ready to go. And as long as you keep doing that work, you're probably going to be okay come race day. It's just one of the challenges that you have to deal with when it comes to cold weather running.
Thank you so much for listening today. And before we get started, this is just one reminder to like, subscribe, review us on your favorite podcast platforms. It's one of the easiest ways to support the show and what we do. If you're looking for other ways to support us, you can head to rustbeltrunning.com. There you can learn more about our offerings in run coaching, shop for merchandise, things like that. Any way you choose to support us, we are most grateful for. So now we're here, Houston. You took part in the half, and I'm really excited to hear all about this. This is a big event because it's a very fast course. We've had American records set here. Have you participated in it during an American record before?
I have. When Sarah Hall set it back, was it not last year, but the year before, or not this past?
I think
so,
3
months ago. 2021, I think. 22. Yes. What year is it? Is it?
It's 24, right? I'm still confused.
Yeah, so it was 22 that she said it, and my boyfriend at the time, husband now, he always catches me around mile 11. There's a turn on mile 11, so he was going out that way, and I knew that it was likely there were some records going down. I knew the women's field was stacked, and I said, "This will show you how old I am." I said, "Take a video if you see the women run by." And he actually managed to snap Sarah Hall just rounding that right around mile 11, and her husband screaming in the background, "Go Sarah, go!" So it's this really cool 10-second video that he got that I was just like completely, fangirling over. So it's really fun. Like you said, it seems like records drop, especially American records drop almost every year lately there.
Yeah. I got to run Chicago this past year when Kelvin Kiptum destroyed the world record. And it really is something to behold when you're able to be a part of that. And you can get this sense from like the spectators and stuff around you that something special is happening. And that you get to say that I ran the same course at the same time as this record holder is pretty. It's pretty neat because very few people can say that. Even at a race, Chicago's 45,000 people, Houston is 35,000 people. That's a large field, but it's still such a small group of people. In the running community.
One of the cool things about running the half is that the two courses start together, and then right before mile 8 they split. And so you can see the marathoners going off on their big adventure, and it's actually right before the half marathon. There's this really cool kind of feeling because the next thing you're going to do when you're running the half is you're going to settle in for the hard part, right? And so you see them go off, but if you're running about a 2-mile half, you finish with the elite, the top of the top. They're coming in on the other side. There's a partition, but you can see them. And so I've been finishing right around the same time as the first male finishing. And it's really cool to it's like, you get this feeling of like you're running, like you're a wildebeest running next to a gazelle. I mean, they just like take off, because they're just always so graceful. But it's also amazing to watch, to see. You're seeing somebody finish in like 2:15, 2:12, these kind of amazing things, and you're coming in there, and that really it kind of depends on what corral you start in, but It right around if you're running a 2-hour half, you're gonna see that kind of finish too. It's pretty neat.
Yeah, that's pretty. That would be really fun. So, Megan, you are from Texas. Is that why you chose this race? Where are you from in Texas? It's a big state.
So, yeah, it is. It's a huge state. I'm originally from Fort Worth, but I moved to the very bottom of Texas when I was very young, so when I was 4 years old. So I'm from the Rio Grande Valley in a little place called Mission, Texas, which is right next to a slightly larger place called McAllen, Texas, which you may hear about in the news for various reasons. But that's where I'm from, where I grew up.
We're going to hear all about your little town this year, aren't we? Oh, yeah, dear Lord.
I still go down there quite a bit, and I run in a state park that is actually behind the wall, and on the other side of the wall, even though it's the other side, the right side, or the American side of the wall. I don't know why it's on the other side of the wall. But anyway, I run in that park, and
there was survived. Imagine that.
Yeah, well, I always joke that it's like the safest place to run in the world because it's so militarized. It really is militarized.
Yeah.
There's sometimes there's National Guard there and that kind of stuff, and it was just like, yeah, I mean, I could just run around here, no problem, and there's just like nothing to worry about there. Not that there ever was anything to worry about before, but that's another story. So that's where I'm from. I moved to Houston many moons ago. We're going on 20 years ago, and I've only been running for I think about 8 years, and this is going into, I just ran my 6th Houston half, well, it's the Aramco half marathon and the Chevron full marathon, and one of those was virtual in 2021. But I've been living in Houston for a very long time. I love the half course because it goes through some neighborhoods that I used to live in, and the Montrose neighborhood, it goes through downtown, it goes through the Rice Village neighborhood, and so it's just kind of fun to run on the roads that you used to live by, and your stomping grounds and stuff. I live out in the suburbs now, but I love that, and it's pretty accessible for anyone in the Houston area, and I think it's, like you said, it's flat. It is so flat in Houston, and we are not good at hills, and so there is absolutely no elevation gain. It is a fast course. The weather is usually pretty good, and so I think that's why a lot of people pick it to run. The timing is a little bit different because you are going through training during Christmas, and sometimes you're hitting like a peak during that time, which isn't really ideal, but that's pretty much the only complaint that I would have but you need it at that time for the weather, because right now, honestly, it's humid outside. We wouldn't want to be running right now.
Yeah. Well, and in case you're listening to this and don't know, next year the half and full are on January 19th. So yeah, it is very unique timing because we're used to September, October, November, or April or May. January. That's strange. What's the weather usually like? I mean, I used to live in Austin, so I have a pretty good idea. But what's the weather like in Houston this time of year? Although it's changing, it's ever changing.
Yeah, it is changing. So usually right now it's very rainy. We have a front coming through. So I think your biggest weather question is whether or not a front is coming through or is going to come through. We had a lot of what will happen this year because the timing of the front was supposed to basically start at the start of the race. So it was going to be getting progressively colder during the race, which is a little bit different. That ended up getting kicked back a few more hours. So from what I've experienced, there have been a few warm ones. And when I say warm, we're talking about in the 80s. Not this past year, but the year before. It was just warm enough that people didn't really realize they needed to keep it down a little bit. And so a lot of people were actually struggling because the weather impacted them when they didn't realize that it was. It was a little bit warmer, a little bit more humid. It was in the 70s with a kind of higher humidity. But for the most part, it's cold, it's gray, or it's one of those crisp, bright winter days where it's still freezing. And I think the worst part that I've experienced weather-wise would be we get some headwinds on that hard part of the course that I was talking about. There's usually some wind coming down Montrose, and so you are facing some big winds for about 3 miles, and every now and then, depending on what it's like that year, there are some years where you're just well, the wind just stole my soul, and I don't know how I'm going to make it to the...
So you live in the Houston area, so you're driving morning of to the race, right?
Yeah.
You said you told me before we started recording that you have to know what the parking situation Typically, I would ask about hotels, but I'm going to ask you what. And you don't have to give away a secret lot or anything. If you want to keep this to yourself, I get it. But do you have any advice on parking on race morning?
Okay, so the parking, you're gonna feel nervous about it, and that's fine. And when you get there and you see the traffic, you're gonna feel nervous about it. I have never had a problem parking. I've never had a problem finding a parking space. Do you have to pay for it? Yes. Is it something around $20 to $30 depending on where you park? Yes. So know that going in. Bring cash to pay for the parking. There are covered lots, there are parking garages, but you're going deeper into traffic. So what I always do is park on the feeder road of 59 North. Well, not on the road, but there's lots of little individually owned lots there. There's an attendant there. I've never had an issue. It is a little bit intimidating because you do have 30,000 people descending upon one spot at once, but give yourself time. Don't freak out when you see people if you're driving in for parking. It's pretty easy. However, I wouldn't recommend if you're flying in from another area, I would recommend just staying at one of the many hotels that are downtown that are right by the starting line and then just walking.
Right.
I wouldn't recommend staying somewhere else and then driving into that's just added pressure.
Right. Well, and if you haven't been to Texas and you don't understand how frontage roads on the interstates work either, it can be a little overwhelming and very easy to get turned around. So. Yeah.
And then we all call it different things too. Frontage, feeder. You know, it's the road next to the highway, y'all.
And you sit there wondering when you don't know what it is, how do I get over there? And then eventually you figure it all out. In Houston, do you have any restaurants that you would recommend for maybe carb loading or just post-race party?
Yes. Okay. So that's it's one small question that's huge, right? I mean, I think you know, right? So Houston is underrated, I think, nationally. People don't know the gems that we have. We're one of the most diverse cities in the country. We have massive populations because of oil and gas, people coming in and out, and there's just so many mom and pop restaurants that are amazing. So I'm definitely not going to be plugging any chains. For nearby the start line, there is a place where if you're staying in any of the hotels down there, it would be really easy to get there. That I think for carb loading is great. It's called Tiny Champions. They've got pizza, they've got pasta. They have beer and wine if you're into that. They have mocktails too, so all of that's good to go. Afterwards, I always like to go to it's a place called Moon Tower Inn, especially if it's a nice day because it's mostly outdoors. They have a covered area, but it's outdoors. And they have fantastic burgers, and it's all, you can get meat, you can get veggie, you can get vegan, whatever you want. And I'm not a vegetarian, but I actually eat their beet burger. It's amazing. So I think that they're great for an after race burger. But in general, it's hard to say one spot. We have the barbecue as well. Let's not forget, I would have to plug that we have a lot of great Vietnamese barbecue fusion. So, hit me up on Instagram or something, or do your research. I could go on about where to eat in Houston for probably a year. But there's always new places coming up, and then there's some definitely some tried and true areas. The downtown area where the race starts and ends is not what I would call the best spot for going and finding food, which generally I find that to be the case in most cities, is that downtown is just going to be whatever can afford the rent there, right?
Right.
And that's not always going to be the best food.
Or it's going to be way overpriced. And that's in weird hours too. You might not even find it open on a Sunday after a race or a Saturday before a race. It tends
to just be during the weekday and even that's changing, right? Everything's different because of the pandemic. Downtowns are barely open anymore. Yeah.
All right, let's get to more exciting stuff. The Expo. So this is a bigger race. So I'm curious, what's some of the Expo experience like? Is this a huge, it's going to be it's its own event? Or is this more of a bare bones type of Expo?
I think it's somewhere in the middle, and I think it's definitely changed since the pandemic. I don't know if companies they're starting to feel like it's not worth the squeeze or something, but they just seem to be smaller and smaller. And there's good stuff. There's lots of photo opportunities, but there's not some of the stuff where you see, like Boston, where you get to try and run as fast as Kipchoge or something on a massive treadmill. Like, you don't have any of that kind of stuff. And you can make it what you want it to be. I think if you're coming in from out of town and you probably, if you don't have a lot of friends that you're going to run into or something like that, it's not much of an event. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. I honestly think it's not necessary. I think the businesses see that they're not getting the return on it as much, but I also think like us runners just don't care as much anymore as we used to. It's all the same stuff. There's only so many pairs of like knockoff shorts and like sale shoes that you can buy, and you can do that elsewhere too. And I think get me in. I want to see the official merchandise, pick up my bib and shirt, and move on.
Pretty much. And I think that also, if you don't have it necessarily, if you're going to a big city marathon and you don't have an affinity for that city, do you really want, we'll say Philadelphia, do you want the Philadelphia skyline on another shirt or a magnet or whatever you picked up, unless you're from Philly? So,
right.
Yeah.
How was the swag, the included swag, and even the like official merchandise that you could buy? What were your thoughts on that overall?
It's pretty good. One of the things that I like is they've recently, in the past 2 years, you used to get 2 shirts, and no one has ever designed a race shirt that I have said, ooh, I want that. And that's just me. I know some people love them, but now they've gone to you get a towel and you get a shirt. And so the towel is much more useful because, especially if you run in the summertime, to just use in the car and stuff like that. And a few of them have been the car towels with the little hood that goes over the back of the seat and stuff. So you get the towel at the packet pickup, and the finisher shirt, something you pick up after you are done and get your medal and things.
Nice.
All the swag is Brooks, by the way. It's like I have the shirt here. It's all right. It's like I said, it's a shirt. It's not,
Okay. Yeah. It's just a shirt. Yeah.
It's a Brooks shirt, and it is what it is.
If you want a good design shirt, go back. We had a Chris Gutierrez came on and talked about the California International Marathon. They had the dopest race shirt I have ever seen. Also,
really?
I'm a huge fan of just cotton race shirts and not tech shirts. I have so many of the tech shirts that I will never wear outside of running. I will only wear them running because they're just not something I'm going to wear every day. And so, to get like a cotton shirt, I got one at Columbus last year, and I actually wear it. It's amazing.
Yeah, I have a cotton long sleeve, like turkey trot shirt. I wear that every Thanksgiving when I'm getting like the dinner ready, because it's a cotton long sleeve shirt. Like, who makes those? You hardly ever get a hold of those. But then speaking of running shirts and good, bad, and the ugly, you said you're from Austin. I did the 3M half last year, and that's a fun course. But I got the shirt was a long sleeve. It was Under Armour, so that was nice. It was, if you take a construction cone and you dial up the color, it was that color, right? So this year I was like, I'm going to go ahead and this is going to be my throw. So I had, a big puffy throwaway fleece that had seen better days. And then I had that shirt on under, and I was planning to throw that at some point in time. But that right around the time that I was getting warm is when that wind started. So I never tossed it.
Yeah.
So I had so many race photos because they figured out I was the one in the Dayglow orange, the one person on the course. And so, I mean, you can see, like, they're like, here's a race photo of you, and it's just my arm. You're like,
that's awesome. Oh man. So let's get what you just brought us to the race. Let's go into the race here. So pre-race transportation. You're driving in. You're parking. How much time did you give yourself, and would you recommend to somebody driving in for the race?
I think if you want to get there to park an hour early, so if start time is 7, you want to be there at least 6. I got there at 5:45 this year, which was the latest I've been there. I'm usually there around like 5:30 in the morning, which is a little too much time. So I think that was perfect. It also depends on what corral you're in because they're different shut-off times, right? So this was my first year being in a corral, so I had to be in at 6:45, and I found that to be, well, a lot of things were different for me this year. I did a charity bib, and one of the, like, when I talk about celebrity status, you get your own bathrooms. So there was, yeah, it was really nice. And so I didn't have to queue up to do the pre-race rituals, right? So that was nice. So I had more time, even though I gave myself less time.
That's clutch. I've been able to experience that once. Ooh, that's next level.
I know, it was insane. So there was some porta potties, and then there was just access to the real bathrooms in part of the convention center. As soon as I walked into this little gated area, lady was like, hot tip, there's real bathrooms in the back. And everybody was, like, wow. We were feeling like elite status. So
yeah, I would not share that information with anybody. That is information that I would keep to myself.
It's for charity. It's charity bids, though, so you kind of like, yeah, fair. Let's raise some money for some charity.
You said you were in a corral for the first time. How easy are the corrals to navigate at Houston, and how well is the organization for them?
I think they're really easy. There's huge signs. You walk out of the convention center. I have no sense of direction, so every year is like a new year for me, and I'm just kind of like, everybody's going that way. I follow. There's signs. They will let you know if you are going into the wrong corral. They will tell you where the right corral is. It's very easy.
Going back to the porta potty situation, in previous years, have you always done charity, or was this the first year?
This was the first year I've done charity, so I've been amongst the regular salt of the earth folks with normal bathroom access.
when you had normal regular person bathroom access, what was the porta potty situation like? Were you spending a lot of time in line?
Obviously, the closer to the start, the longer the lines get. So when I first get there, I always, I drop off my gear for afterwards and just head straight to the porta potties. And it always depends on what you have to do, right? If you need to go 3 times before whatever kind of ritual you have, you got to work it out. The longer you wait, the longer those lines are going to be. I have never had success once you get out of the convention center getting access to a porta potty, although I saw plenty that looked like very short lines this past year. There was one year that I actually had to stop. There's like about half a mile at the start, there's porta potties just like right there, and nobody is in them. So I've actually utilized that before. That was one time where I was just like way overhydrated and made a mistake. But yeah, the lines can get pretty long. Not to say that there aren't a lot of porta potties, and they are out towards the corrals. They're in the corrals, and they're in the convention center before you leave. It's just there's a lot of people. So there's going to be lines.
Right. You mentioned dropping off your gear. How organized and how easy is the gear check at the start?
It's really simple. It's set up, partitions by bib number. You write that on your thing. There's another little clip that goes on your gear bag of your bib number. You hand it to them. It's usually high school students that are volunteering. When you get done, you go back to the same spot, they go grab it. It really is about both, picking up and dropping off, about an exercise of 5 minutes or so.
Nice. That's good that they got that organized, because when races don't, man, that can be a real stressor before the race and a real irritant afterwards if it's a pain.
Yeah.
All right, so the gun goes off, and we're crossing the start. This being a big race, in a big downtown area, how is the congestion at the start?
That's another, once again, it depends on what corral you start in. So I've been in C, B, and E. Or C, B, and A. There's a D and an E corral. C corral was my first experience, and it was bonkers. It was so crowded. And during that race, I never felt like I got free of dodging people. It was pretty crowded. B was not. And A was even less so. A was almost like, for me, like the spectators weren't even ready for you. They're like, oh, we started, you know. but B I thought was like a really sweet spot. And like I said, C was pretty crowded. So I imagine C overflows too into D and E. So yeah, the farther back you get, the more crowded it's going to be, in the course along the way as well.
When it comes to water stops, how frequent are the water stops, and do you find them to be organized and like easy to access?
Mm-hmm. So the water stops they're every mile and a half, so they're pretty frequent. There's a separate gel station. There's gels at every water stop, but then they have one station that's just gels that doesn't take up the spot of a water spot. It's in between two others. And I think there's Gatorade and water at each. The volunteers are great. They're always really good. You don't have that situation where you're seeing people they have their fingers in your cup handing it to you or anything like that. They're really organized. Like any water stop, it can get crowded. You can have people cutting in front of you. The ground will be wet because of just spills and everything like that. There's cups everywhere. But otherwise, like, for a big race, I think they do really well.
Did you have to use any aid stations at all? And were those, I assume those were out and easy to access as well?
There's aid stations at the water stops. I have not had to use them, but I have had some friends that have used them, and from what I hear, it's really good. I've seen them in use, and I think they really have a good organized race for sure.
Any issues with any course markings or anything? Were you always, pretty crowded course. You said you just kind of follow people, so that's probably what you did. But any issues understanding where you are on the course at any time?
No, I do know that some people end up on that much longer run than they expected. They must be running really hard in that half to just accidentally go on the full, because to me it seems very, very clear. There are people there that are, there's big signs. You have to you are intentionally going into what looks like another corral when you leave for the full. So you really should be aware of what's happening. And you were also getting yelled at. Like, people are looking at your bibs and telling you which way to go, right? So, but people do it every year. It happens that people on the half end up at mile 12 of the full going, oh my God, I've made a very big mistake. But otherwise, I think it's really clear. There's the mile markers are different colors. And I know this year I was in a pain hole by mile 12, and I saw a green sign, and I thought it was mile 13, and I was starting to rejoice, and it was somebody's stupid sign that they were advertising something. So aside from that, were you just like looking and praying and hoping for another mile marker? But otherwise, no, I think it's really well. They have the kilometers, they have the miles. It's well marked.
And you said the split is at mile 8 earlier?
It's a little bit before mile 8, yeah.
Man, if you miss that, yikes. Yeah, because you're going to notice real late. You might as well just finish the full at that point. Goodness.
Yeah, it's I haven't run the full. I have lots of friends that have, and from my opinion, from what I've heard of the full, is I only choose to run the half, because that's really the part of the course that has a lot of people cheering and a lot of crowd support. And I have been told by a lot of people that it really dies off once you split from the half, and you're not getting any miles or any crowd support for a long stretch of time until you get back into downtown.
Yeah, I think you see that with a fair amount of non-major, larger races. I'm not sure if it's just way more people sign up for the half versus the full, and so you have like spectators kind of die out, or if it just has to do with how course, organization has to go. And you end up running it into an area like in Columbus, Ohio. They run it into the Ohio State campus on the back half. At first, my thought was, "Oh, this is gonna be great. We're gonna get a bunch of drunk college kids out to cheer us on." No, you don't get any of that. It is desolate.
They're all sleeping.
Right. I'm right on the drunk part. They just weren't out with us.
Yeah, they didn't make it out there. No, I think it's a combination of all those things. For the Houston course, it definitely goes into an area where the parking isn't readily available to just kind of step out of your car and go, cheer someone on. So, and yeah, it is what it is. I like the crowd support in the half. It's a lot of fun, and I don't run major races, like I haven't run Chicago and that kind of stuff, but I think that it's great to have so many people out there with their funny signs and all of that kind of stuff. Some of the best crowd support on the course is actually around the 5K mark. You go by a fire station, and they always put their ladder up, and they have they put down the massive American flag right over the course. Firefighters are always out there, like ready to give high fives and power ups and all that kind of stuff. And that's
cool.
That's one of my favorite parts of the course, because you see the flag and you're like, all right, I'm about a 5K down, and it's kind of like that first, here we go, this is where we are, and it's a real good booster.
All right, so we have run through the course. You went through the split 5 miles ago. We're at the final 0.1 of your 13.1. What's some of the finish line organization like? You mentioned earlier that sometimes you're kind of you're finishing with the elites from the full. But how's the organization as you approach the finish and cross that finish into the corral?
I don't want to skip right around mile 11, where if you want to, there is beer and fireball shots available on either side of. We have local breweries set up, and they're ready to hand out if you need any kind of fun. And I usually try and really race this one, but not this past race. The year before, I was like, I'm just going to have fun. The first time I ever grabbed the beer and the fireball, and it's an absolute party in that part of the course. So I don't want to skip that part. But when you're getting in, you hit downtown, and I've always thought it was a little bit weird, because you're leaving that party area, you hit downtown, and it seems like the buildings just kind of suffocate the noise, and it seems to get quiet until you really get towards the very end, and then it's just it's a big crowd. It's very organized. I've seen a lot of people basically on hands and knees crawling through, and people are ready to help you. They are ready to pick you up and put you in a wheelchair if you need to. All of that medical assistance is really, really good. And then they're there and they're smiling at you. They're going to give you you're going to walk a little bit. So you don't get that medal right away. You walk a little bit, you turn around a corner, and then there's the medals. There's always some very excited photographers there to get to right after you are getting all those post-race highs just hitting your face. So those are probably some of the best photos, right? You just got your medal. And then you go right back into the convention center, and you get your banana and your chocolate milk and a couple more photos. And you can go pick up your clothes, and they have changing areas for you to change in and stuff.
Oh, nice. That's I like that, changing areas. That's cool. I've not heard that before. I would love that.
Yeah, those are nice. They're curtained off, and there's male, female, and then there's all gender. And I mean, it's pretty private, you know, you don't have like your own little private area, but you know, you just go stand in a corner and do what you need to do and change. And I always do a full change. It's great.
Yeah, I mean, you're out there running and you're vulnerable with all these people. I don't mind, you know, but I just don't want to necessarily do that in front of an entire city.
Right. No, it's inside, it's curtains off, and there's like tables you can kind of arrange your stuff while you're changing. Yeah, it's kind of nice. That's why it's always like, I would say definitely do gear check, because it's worthwhile. Right. You can change. Yeah.
Well, and you know, the chance that, you know, the race is rainy for part of it or something like that. Like if there's any party or anything after the race, you don't want to be there in your wet clothes. Even putting clothes on over wet clothes is, you know, going to be miserable. Cold. Yeah, so to get a chance to be able to take the wet clothes off in a more private setting is without having to maybe find a dumpster to hide behind or something like that. I mean, we've all kind of been there too.
Doing the towel wraparound, you know? Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's amazing. I'm gonna actually I'm gonna send an email to the race director of the Columbus Marathon about that, because he's always looking for ways to enhance the race. And yeah, they have a post-race party, but this past year I was under a bridge in front of some police officers changing my clothes because it was raining, and I was like, I'm getting out of these. So,
I have definitely picked up gear and been like, that's great. I'm in front of the Texas State Capitol. Now what? Like, I guess I'm just going to put a sweater on and go.
Yeah. Oh, all right. What did I have now? That's really good stuff. I'm stoked on that change. It's funny. That kind of threw me off because I'm like super excited about it. What do you think of the medal this year? Like, do they change it, or do they have like a pretty similar? You've done it so many times. Are you going to see pretty much the same medal year after year, or are you going to get a different one?
You're going to see pretty much the same medal. So for the half, it's going to be this color scheme because those are their colors, right? So this is this year. You know, it says on the back where I finished, blah, 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 on this date.
Right.
So that's the Houston skyline. It's it's a very standard medal for a larger race. Every now and then you're going to get a Texas shaped medal because we're Texas and we love the shape of our state. It's a good shape. Somebody asked me once, they said, I don't want to be rude, but why are Texans so proud of being from Texas? And I was like, I had like an existential crisis, because it's one of those things where you're just like, that's just the way it is, right? How do you answer this? And I said, have you seen the shape of our state? But otherwise it's very standard. It's not, you know, anything particularly artistic or weird.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. Here in Ohio, we're the exact same way. The amount of Ohio-shaped stuff that we have, I mean, it's stupid. Because I have an Ohio-shaped medal as well, so I think I have a couple of them. So at the finish, do they do anything special as far as like any type of finish line party? Do they have like a PR bell or gong or anything like that to celebrate?
There's a PR bell. There's all you can drink tiny Michelob.
All you can drink?
Yeah, they don't judge you on how many. I mean, I wouldn't pick up like 10 at once, but you can go back like as much as you want to, which I have definitely tested out before. This year I was on like for training, I did like no alcohol, right? And I was like, I'm not going to break that with the Michelob Ultra Light. So I waited and I PR'd this year, and it was a really, for me, it was a really big deal because I had a really bad 2023. So I was like, let's just kick this to the curb with this race, right? And so I was able to do that. So I was like, I went home and had some champagne. So I didn't break my fast with a Michelob Ultra Light. But there have been other years where I know that you can get as many as you want.
I'm not a fan of Mick Ultra, but I have definitely I have slammed my share of Michelob Ultra after races.
It's a good one for after a race for sure. Yeah.
Well, that's all you can eat or all you can drink Mick Ultra and changing areas. I'm sold.
Speaking of food, you can get a full breakfast before you leave. Pick up your banana and your chocolate milk, and then go ahead and change. But this is what I do. I'm never one of those people that's like, I'm hungry right now. Some people can eat. It usually takes me a few hours, so I'll eat that banana because I know that I should. But otherwise, it's like 2 hours later, and then I'm going to be eating for 3 days nonstop. But HEB, which is our another thing Texas is very proud of, is our HEB. So they provide a full breakfast, and this year I believe it was like biscuits and gravy and sausage and pancakes. And you can eat as much as you want and before you leave. And that's just another section, and it's another little ticket that you have on your bib.
This sounds incredible. So, changing areas, all you can eat and all you can drink at the finish. I'm on this.
Ice cream too.
Oh man! All right. Well, that's gonna be for my buddy Tyler and my friend Nate from up here. The ice cream. They're yeah. All right. Cool. Well, regarding your overall experience, do you have any other little highlights that you would like to hit?
Well, I think if you're running the half, we've talked about some of my favorite parts of the course. There's another part right after that split that we go by the local running store, Fleet Feet, and they always go all out. And so that's an awesome part of the course. That's a definite party for that block. It's huge amounts of people out there spectating, and that's always fun. Like I said, right before you were talking into the really hard part of the race. So I kind of appreciate that. And overall, yeah, it's fun. It's really fun. I think if you're from Houston, and I think I would definitely recommend it if you're trying to hit races in every state. And it is so cool to be on the same course, to hear that somebody broke an American record or somebody broke a world record and you were there and you were running right behind them. It's a fast course. I am not lying. When you hear, oh no, it's flat. No, you cannot get flatter than this course. There are no secret hills. The full course has an overpass. I think that's the biggest hill on the full course. It is very, very fun.
Well, I love that. Yeah, this has been a lot of fun talking about the Houston Marathon and Half Marathon today. In closing, I just want to ask, if somebody was on the fence about this race, what would your sales pitch be to them to get them to come to Houston and run the Chevron Houston Marathon or whatever, however they do the sponsors there?
Okay, my sales pitch would be that you're going to have a great time. You're gonna come to Texas. You're gonna eat some fantastic food. You're gonna run on what I think is a pretty course, going through pretty parts of our town. And I think every town has some gross parts and some pretty parts. But overall, this is a course that will keep your mind occupied away from what your legs are doing. And we do everything bigger in Texas. So like I said, you're going to have a big breakfast. You're going to have lots of beer. You're going to have big fun. And we are all very welcoming here as well. So we'll give you a big warm Texas welcome.
and you're going to definitely know what the shape of Texas is when you're done too. So
yes, you're going to leave with one Texas shaped artifact. It's going to be on your towel. It's going to be on the shirt, or maybe even the medal.
We have one. We bought when we moved back to Ohio from Texas. We were at like some Home Goods or something. I don't know. Or maybe somebody bought it for us. I don't remember. But we have in the entryway to the foyer of our house, we have on the wall a little Texas-shaped thing that just says home on it. Just to remind us of where my son was born and where so much of our life started. But yeah, it is Texas-shaped. It has to be. So that's something our states have in common. But, well, I've had an absolute blast today talking about the Houston Marathon and Half Marathon while simultaneously watching the Olympic trials on the other side of my screen. But we're going to wrap it up here. And I just want to say, Megan, thank you so much for joining me today and talking about this. And maybe if you do Austin again soon, we can have you on and talk about that.
Yeah. I have a lot to say about that course.
Well, you got to tell me a little bit after I stop recording here. But, to everybody, thank you so much for listening today. And just one more call to support us. Like, subscribe, review us on your favorite podcast platforms. You can find us on Instagram at Rust Belt Running. Megan, where can you be found on Instagram?
I am at Maybe, MAIB as in boy, EY.
All right. So go follow her and her running journey all over Texas. And it's about to get real hot there. So if you're interested in talking about a race you've run recently, or if there's a race you'd like us to get a review of, please feel free to reach out to us on Instagram or email us at rustbeltrunning@gmail.com. Any way we can help you decide on a race in the future, we'd love to help. So, friends, we wish you the best in your running journeys. And we thank you again for listening. Until next time, enjoy your miles, everybody.